So there's been another Nintendo Switch rumor floating around, and before I talk about this Nintendo Switch rumor, I will leave some links down in the description below if you'd like to check out this article for yourself. Now there's been a recent rumor, like recently, I mean the last couple days, that there's been a posting of a recent released game that's coming to the Nintendo Switch, or might be coming to the Nintendo Switch. I want to make that very clear. It's not guaranteed it's coming to the Nintendo Switch because, as again, this is only a rumor. The game I am talking about is the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy that was recently released, I think, last summer for the PS4. Do I think the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy is coming to the Nintendo Switch? I'm not certain it's coming to the Nintendo Switch, but it could very well come to the Nintendo Switch, honestly. Right after the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy came out on the PS4, there was this one rumor floating around that suggested that the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy was coming to the Xbox One. Now, granted, it's not currently available on the Xbox One, but if you know the Crash Bandicoot series, Crash Bandicoot after the PS1 and I think the PS2 era became more of a multi-platform game, so it wasn't just an exclusive to the Sony platforms. I think after the PS2, I want to say, and if you didn't know something, Nintendo did get some Crash Bandicoot games. I remember back on the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance was when the Crash Bandicoot series actually came to the Nintendo platforms. I remember playing Crash Bandicoot back on the Game Boy Advance. I think one of the games for Crash Bandicoot on the Game Boy Advance was Crash's Big Adventure or Crash's Huge Adventure. So you can see they did put one on the Nintendo Game Boy Advance, so it is very possible that it could be coming to the Nintendo Switch. I honestly do hope that the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy does make its way over to the Nintendo Switch, just because, think about it, it's a platformer, it's Crash Bandicoot. Honestly, this game would be a perfect game to play on the go. Not only that, it does kind of fit the whole Nintendo market scheme. It does fit with all their other first-party titles. Of course, you look at Mario, Zelda, whatever they're doing, Kirby, Yoshi. You look at all their IPs. This would be a perfect match for a Nintendo system. And honestly, of course, more games, the better. So if they were to release the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy for the Nintendo Switch, it would just mean more games. And who is going to complain about more games? More games are always better. And honestly, right when the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy came out, I personally thought that it should have came out for the Nintendo Switch, just because it is a perfect match. Now, does the Nintendo Switch actually need the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy? Honestly, if you're to ask me, no. It's not like an amazing game, but it is a very fun game, and I honestly think a lot of more people should play that game, so I think it would be a very good match for the Nintendo Switch. But I want to know, when the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy, if it ever comes out for the Nintendo Switch, is it going to be $10 more than the PS4 version? Because if you didn't know, the PS4 version was never originally released at $60. It was actually only released at $40. So I want to know if they're going to publish it on the Nintendo Switch and charge $10 more, just because a lot of different games started charging, I think, a little bit more for their copies on the Nintendo Switch. But honestly, even if they were to charge that extra $10 for the Nintendo Switch version and charge $50 for the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy, I think that would still be a very good deal, considering you can play it in handheld mode and you can play on the Nintendo Switch in dock. And honestly, even though the Nintendo Switch is not that powerful, just think about the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy. Crash Bandicoot is not one of those games that's really a high demanding, graphically powerful game, and it really doesn't need all the graphics in the world. So if they were to release this on the Nintendo Switch, I guarantee you, even in docked mode, it would still look like a very good game, and honestly, it would run pretty well, I'm pretty sure. I wonder if they're going to keep it locked at 30, because the PS4 version of Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy suffers from it being only 30, whereas the original releases of those three games were still only running at 30 frames per second, which is kind of odd. You would think in 2017, with newer hardware, of course, it's been like literally 20 some years since the originals came out, you would think they would want to run in 60 frames per second, but for some reason they decided to stick with the older 30 frames per second for the game. I'm assuming if it comes to the Nintendo Switch, they're probably just going to port the game from the PS4 version over to the Nintendo Switch and call it a day. Of course, the graphics will be slightly dumbed down. Of course, you won't get that upscaling 1440p or 4K that they're calling it on the PS4 Pro version of the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy. Another reason I'm actually kind of getting hyped up for this whole rumor, again, this is only a rumor. Another reason I'm actually getting hyped up for this, or hoping it actually comes out on the Nintendo Switch, is because if you didn't know, I said this like literally 100 times on my channel, but I am a very big Crash Bandicoot fan because, well, I did grow up with the game, so that's kind of why I do have a lot of that's why I really do like the Crash Bandicoot games in general, just because I grew up with them. And honestly, I do hope they actually go ahead and put it on the Nintendo Switch, because if they put it on the Nintendo Switch, you know I'm going to have my hard-earned dollar out there, and I will buy a copy on the Nintendo Switch. Granted, I already have it on the PS4, but I wouldn't mind rebuying this game, because literally I do love the Crash Bandicoot series, and it would be fun to take this thing on the go. Now, granted, you can actually play some of the first couple of games on the go already if you owned a PSP. The PSP had emulation. I don't know if they were on this PSN store, but I know through emulation, not really talking about emulation, but I remember emulation being a thing on the PSP. You can actually get them on there, so you could actually play these on the go way back in the day if you wanted to play the first couple of Crash Bandicoot games from the PS1 on the go. But this is just some great news. Again, these are only rumors, so don't get your hopes up about the Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy coming to the Nintendo Switch. It may come to the Switch, and it may not come to the Switch, but I wouldn't see why not. I don't know when it would come to the Switch, but I can see it coming to the Switch without a doubt. I hope it does come, and I don't see why it couldn't come to the Switch. Anyway, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.